Okay, take three. Third time's a charm here. Thanks so much to YouTube for making my day a little more stressful than I was hoping for. But hey, we are here now. I am Kyle Hamrick, senior motion designer here at School of Motion, and technical genius of live streams as well. I actually started this a minute ago, and I went through my whole intro spiel and even took a minute to stall a little bit so people could come over from the other thing. And then I realized that I wasn't actually live. So here we are this time. Great. Thank you so much for being here with us, for jumping over from the other event, etc. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce my guests today who have not already spectacularly failed twice that I'm aware of. But, there's plenty of opportunities for that to happen, I'm sure. So we're going to be talking about expressions in After Effects today, and I have two very smart gentlemen here that are going to help me talk about that since I'm on such a roll already. So I have Nol Honig and Zack Lovatt here. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, everybody.
And we're here for real this time, so that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Are we
I,
sure?
um,
We're totally
Kyle,
sure.
I'm still wondering who these two geniuses are. I just see Noel and I don't think that's what you meant.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I have two more people that are hiding that I'm going to reveal later in the show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
Pop out of a hat.
We're just standing in for now.
Yeah, I hope you have a hat handy because I don't. So, by the way, if you're not familiar with the three of us, there's going to be a lot of really bad, awful, terrible puns and a lot of chest hair, apparently. This is like the chest hair club today.
Oh, my. Speak for yourself.
Unintentional.
Well buttoned up.
Okay, so for anyone unfortunate enough to not already be familiar with you two fine gentlemen, could we maybe just take a second and you can kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you come from, why we should listen to you, those kinds of things. I don't know. Noel, I'm going to go ahead and start out with you, if you don't mind.
Hey, everybody. So I'm Noel. I'm an animator and a designer and a director, and I live in New York. I have a cat. I love expressions. I'm not sure what else we need to know, but I'm super psyched to see everybody here on the chat, and it's great to be here with you, Kyle and Zach.
You're also like a big-time teacher, right?
Oh, yeah, I forgot that. Yes, I've been teaching a long time for about 20 years. Yeah, I basically teach basic After Effects and mid-level After Effects motion design stuff. It's kind of been my specialty. Yeah. And I teach After Effects Kickstart also at School of Motion.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Busy guy.
It happens.
Yeah. Getting back on our roll. And yes, I know Noel's Skype quality is a little bit weird here. It was perfect before the show, and then it got weird. So we're just going with it. That's the theme of today. All right.
Aww.
Yeah. It's a little better now. We'll see. All right. How about you, Zach? What's your story? What do you have going on?
Yeah. Well, these days, so for what it's worth, viewers, we're both a little I guess all three of us are just with the stream starting and stopping. But I call myself a technical director, like a 2D technical director for motion design. And it pretty much means I do the nerdy shit that you don't want to do and you might not want to learn how to do. So a lot of the time it's building scripts and pipeline and tools for studios, or setting up data-driven design and animation projects, or building expression rigs and templates and toolkits and all this workflow optimization stuff that is a little less making art and more making art work smoother inside of a bigger system. But this is coming from after 10 years of being a motion designer and compositor on all sorts of stuff. So it's just art and art forward or artist friendly nerdery. And that's what I do here in LA.
I think that's a great way to describe it. I mean, you do a lot of things that help other people make their job more easy. Or things that maybe people even really wouldn't be able to do. Automation and stuff like that. All the things that our industry demands nowadays.
It's really gratifying to just like be able to build something that all of you get to use and just excel with. But yeah.
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 Awesome.
His problem solving skills are out of control, folks. He knows the solution to every like little problem that you might have. It's pretty amazing.
I mean, to lend evidence to that, he's the one that told me, like, Kyle, I don't think we're actually broadcasting here.
For example. Yes.
Just, yeah, for example.
10 minutes later.
So obviously I can see a lot of you are very active in the chat already. Rightfully so, since we've had such an interesting start. I have Frank and Ella helping us out in the chat today. So we are really looking forward to any questions that you have for us. And we especially would love to know, like, if you're a School of Motion student or alumni, or if you're currently taking, one of the courses that either of these fellows taught, we'd love to hear what you think, or if you have something you want to ask them. So feel free to put those in there. I'll kind of pepper them in whenever they feel appropriate, or I have a couple of times when I'll specifically be looking at those too. So, guys, before we really dive into it here, just because I know there's probably a few people watching that don't even know what expressions are. Can we just take a quick second and say, what is an expression and why should I care?
How about Noel, you take this from an artist point of view. Why should an artist care?
Okay. I'm put on the spot. Artists should care about expressions, I think, because just for one, it'll just make your workflow go faster, so you have more time to focus on the art and less, focusing on the nuts and bolts of After Effects and the way it's working. So if you could set up, for example, really great rigs for your shots using expressions, sometimes that'll save you a ton of time, and sometimes it'll open up animation possibilities that you didn't even realize that you had, which is an artistic thing, I guess. It can really change the way you approach the shot, depending on what you're working on. So I think, that's something that I like to think about. Plus, one of the things that we talk about in expression session is just using random to create art, which is one of my very favorite projects in the whole class. So it's just letting things be randomly picked out by the code and then composited together. And I really love that kind of beautiful mess. So, but maybe we should give them a technical description, Zach. So why don't you take that?
Yeah. Well, short of the description just yet, it's expressions, like Noel was saying, it's sort of you can do everything by hand, but a lot of the time doing everything by hand sucks. And you've definitely been there. You need to take these keyframes and use them again and again and again to loop something, or the exact same keyframes and apply it to a million layers, or offset every layer by a few frames. And so you're duplicating and copying and pasting, and it's a pain in the ass, especially when you need to go and then update that first set of animation. Yep. And you're like, oh crap, now you've got to go and update all the keys, redo all your work. And expressions just to help create these relationships between layers and properties of animation, so you can do the work once and have it just work for everything else.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of just using them for a bunch of, just daily little things that, instead of 10 clicks to do that thing that you have to do all the time, make yourself a little preset with a slider or something like that. And then you can apply that real easily and just have it be a easily modifiable thing, so that you don't need to dive in quite so far. If it's something that you do 10 times a day, use the tools to make yourself be more efficient, and you can spend more time being creative instead of worrying about rebuilding the thing every time.
Right. Then there's the rabbit hole, which is a totally different thing.
Yeah. I think a good way to, describe it too. So just for those that aren't familiar, so expressions are written in JavaScript code. And so I know some people are afraid of code that sounds like a scary thing. And, obviously it's okay to just kind of start small. And you are, quite literally, I think you guys say this in the class, you're quite literally learning another language. So it's okay that it takes a little bit to get comfortable with it. But
right. You wouldn't expect that you could learn Spanish in 2 weeks or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Not without moving to LA.
But we're going to show you a couple examples in just a minute here, actually, of ways that you can, I think some really accessible stuff that will just be helpful in your daily work, and hopefully make it a little more friendly too. And know that like you don't have to be expecting to write 50 lines of code for stuff. Like you can literally write one word and like link a thing, or not even that much sometimes. And just knowing how these can help you is such a great boost.
Right. You don't need to be good at math to be good at expressions.
No. Like math can play a role, but most of the time math has nothing to do with it. Like it's a whole separate domain. Yeah.
Or the math you're doing is like third grade math that you can get into complicated stuff, but most of the time it's like plus or divided, and it's it's way less scary than a lot of people think it is.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Noel, I know you have a little demo that you're gonna start us off with. If are you ready for that?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
Cool. Well, I'm going to come over to Noel's screen here. So, close whatever incriminating stuff you have, and then we'll grab your screen here. Okay. I've got you up, and
you got my screen here?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, right on. Well, basically, I kind of figured that I'd start at a really basic place, and probably the most basic expression that everybody learns first is the wiggle expression. I'm assuming that most of you actually have played with the wiggle expression before, but if not, to make any expression on any layer, you would just option click on the stopwatch, which opens this dialog box here. And then if you type wiggle, basically in the parentheses, we're going to put two arguments in the parentheses. The first one is the frequency. So that's like how many times per second it happens. So let's say like 4 times a second. Then let's have the amplitude be like 100 or something, okay? So I think you've all done this before, and basically it just looks like this, right? It's just wiggling, right? Super cool. Now, one thing that actually came up recently, somebody wrote me and was like, okay, I'm learning expressions, and I learned wiggle, but I don't know how to like have the wiggle start and then stop. And, because they just kind of hard-coded these values in here. And so, that kind of brings up this other thing, which if all you know is the wiggle expression, I did want to mention expression controls, which are super awesome, in particular sliders. So if I select this layer and I go up to effect, I could go to expression controls and then slider control. Now there's a bunch in there, and if you're just learning After Effects, you might have tried putting these on some of your layers and been like, this does nothing. So that's actually a pretty common thing. I think I did that too myself. But let's see, if we choose the slider control, basically what it does, whoopsies, I already have that on there from when I was practicing. Ignore that. Basically, here's my slider, and I can rename this something like amplitude or whatever. And right now, it's just, a blank slider that does nothing. But it's cool the way it works, and it looks fun. But let's just say if I want to set this to 100, right, and then get here into my expression, select this, and like what Kyle was just saying, I don't need to write code in here. I could just use this little pick whip, which is familiar to you, and click over here to this value. And now, whoops, I did something wrong.
No pressure.
Oh, I think I forgot a parentheses at the end. Yeah. Okay. So now it's the exact same, right? So it's just taken that 100 and it's substituted this number. But what we can do now is animate this slider. All right. So let's just say over 1 second we want it to get up to 100, and then we can go back to the beginning and set this down to 0, and now it'll kind of gradually start wiggling, right? So that's just one thing that you can use sliders for, but I find them to be amazingly useful, and I use sliders in like everything that I do, basically. I love sliders.
Same.
And the other expression controls too are useful. Angle control, the newer drop-down menu is actually really useful. They're all great. I would definitely recommend you checking those out.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Noel. Hopefully that was a great little intro for anyone that hasn't used those before. And like you said, I think it's probably really common. There's a handful of effects in After Effects, even some that do things where you apply it and you're just not really sure. And sometimes you just need to understand what it's actually for to be able to see what the purpose is. But expression controls only exist to control other things. So by themselves, they do nothing.
Good point.
Yeah.
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 So I always found it interesting, like early on in life, learning expression controls. Like you have the smile slider, and that's I don't know. Okay, that was really bad.
I kind of loved it.
Yeah. Thank you. I have nothing else for this joke. It was just that one throwaway.
So I feel like one of the
go away
bits we
now.
should have planned is the long cane thing, so that we could, like do that
Yeah.
between windows. Oh, that would have been amazing.
That would have been really good.
Or some mini hamburgers while I'm talking about sliders. I kind of thought about that, but I didn't get it together. Everybody,
That
sorry.
was so good.
Oh, I want to talk about sliders.
Yes, there we go. Okay,
Oh.
back on track. Look at me with my serious face on. So I'm going to tell you some more useful stuff here, people. And while we go over to my screen now, which is what's happening, I'm going to close this YouTube chat, and then we're going to secretly behind the scenes change who's screen sharing on my thing. Woo-hoo-hoo. So hopefully everything will look right when we come back, but we'll see. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about a little function called value. Okay, and apparently my bar wants to be here. We'll just move that. Great. So value is this little function that, and Zach, if I say function and it's not actually function, feel free to yell at me. That allows you to look at the value of the property before the expression. And that can be really, really useful, especially with expression controls and stuff like that. So I'm going to show you just like a real quick example. You could take two layers and parent them together like this, so that now, every time I'm moving this one, the other one moves with it. And then I could keyframe, this green one and do things with it, right? But sometimes you don't want those parented together, because if I were doing something like changing the scale or rotation, then, that affects that thing, and maybe that's not what I want. So instead, you could use value in an example like this to link just the position property of a couple things. So I'm going to type value, V-A-L-U-E, and then asterisk, not asterisk, plus, just value plus. And then I'm going to use this little pick whip thing here and link it to the position of that yellow and red square, okay? So as soon as I click this, you're going to see this move, because the math works out now that it's taking its values plus these values. So, it just moves it to that area of the screen position because of the way the math works. But I can move it back here, and if I needed to be perfect, I would. But now what happens is anytime I touch the position of this red one, the green one's going to follow it because of the way that that's getting mathed out to that position. But it gets to ignore all these other properties like scale and rotation. So if you ever just want to link one property like that, that's a good way to do it. I'll just show you another quick example of how value works to bring in the expression controls Nol was talking about. If you add a checkbox control to this layer right here, this is just a null that exists only to hold some controls. And I'm going to just put a quick little expression on this one, value times, and then I'll pick whip to that checkbox. So what's going on here is a checkbox control, it's a binary switch. It's 0 or 1. And so anything times 0 is 0, and anything times 1 is itself. So if it's off, it's always 0. If it's on, it's always itself. And that means I can still change this opacity value here and still have this be an on-off switch. And so I could easily copy paste that to a whole bunch of layers here, and they could have different opacity values, as you can see, but it still works as an on-off switch for this whole big chunk of my project, right? You want one more? I'll do one more, sure. I wasn't sure how much time to fill, so this is a nice little example that, let's say you've already built this cool little pop-on scale expression here, or just keyframes. But your client says, hey, that logo needs to be bigger, because that's what clients do, right? So I'll just add a slider control, and we could rename this if we want, call it scale adjust, okay? And so I already have this scaling from 0 to 100, but if I want to be able to change what that looks like, I could take value times, and then just pick whip it up to this slider, right? Okay, well, 0 times anything is 0, and then, whoa, what happened? Well, remember that this is scale, so it's already 100. So if we just do a little bit of real quick math here, if you divide anything by 100, now it's a percentage, right? And so this slider is now going to take that existing animation and multiply it by whatever this number is, so that you can, use this like scale, but without messing with those scale keyframes that you already had, right? So hopefully that's a useful little thing. I have this kind of thing built as a preset, and I use it probably in every project. So hopefully those were a couple cool little examples of ways that you can use, I think that's pretty accessible. It's just a couple little basic math functions and some pick whipping that, should make your day easier, hopefully.
Yeah. And like most of the time, all of the expressions you're going to use will be that level.
Right.
Like just a little pick whip, a little bit of something times something, and you're already working so much more efficiently than the person beside you. Mm-hmm. And in a freelance environment, if you have that little bit of an edge, like that really helps. It adds up. People notice.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. We hear this a lot from people in Expressions session who are like, I just started taking the class, and already the knowledge I'm getting, I'm being kind of put on different things at work, because I have this knowledge. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of cool.
So Zach, do you want to show us your little demo here? See what we got? I know you have some really cool wizardry.
Mostly because it revolves around you, but
Aww.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've got you up here, so let's see what you have going on.
Okay. So here we have this super familiar little lower third that Kyle made, and Kyle's name is there.
How'd you get that?
Well, we hacked. It's all hacks. And so this comp is set up, and it's exposed some properties, some master properties rather. And the thing with master properties is that you get these little toggles out here in your timeline for things like you could show the logo or not, or we can come in here and fade the title bar, or we can change the name to bananas are wonderful, and everything just resizes. And maybe the title here is no, they aren't, I hate bananas. So it's this idea of giving yourself some little properties. And this is in Expressions right here. This is just kind of some After Effects stuff. What is expression driven is to have this bar automatically extend, stretch, whatever. Or if we change the name to high, well then it's not going to shrink because it knows that the subtitle is longer. Well, all of this work of building a lower third and setting it up, all of this we actually go over in Expression session. So if you were looking for somewhere to learn all this,
just hypothetically, right?
just if you want it. But part of the annoyance or frustration with master properties is that changing the text is kind of a pain. In that you've got to right-click here and go enter the name of this little window, or you can come into the expression and type in something here like "Hello, everyone," and it'll update. But this is kind of slow. So what I want to show is a really kind of easy way to set text based on something you can control easier in After Effects, which is the layer's name. So in this case, this layer's name is WFF Workflow Show Lower Third Template. And what we can do is if we hold Alt and click Name to enable the expression, well, if we just pick whip up to the layer itself, it says this layer, and that means this layer. But layers have this handy property called name. And so if we just have .name and we click away, now we can see that, oh, I had the wrong name showing. The layer name is template Kyle. And now the text inside of the master property, inside of the template, is this layer's name. So what if I were to say John or Kyle Hamrick? You can change this here super easily, and it's going to update whatever's there. Now, I know this did take a few steps, one to set up the lower third and another to expose it as a master property and set the sizing. But this idea of just linking it to the name of the thing is really handy. And because layer names are dynamic and they increment, every time you duplicate this and this number changes, it changes up there. So I'm going to delete those. And let's see this other one. Let's not see that one, actually. So this one's Kyle Hamrick. Let's duplicate it and say Zack Lovatt. We're seeing two of them. Another one to say Nol Honig. And so that's a really kind of quick way to set this up. But we actually have a few pieces of information here. We have the name and this little subtitle. Like, this makes no sense, despite Yeah, this makes no sense. I had to reread it to see if it did make sense somehow. So there's this other more expression-y thing, and we go into this in a ton more detail in expression session. But this layer.name, it's a piece of text. And in the expression engine in JavaScript, text has this fancy function, this method called split. Oh, like banana split. Wait, I think we made the banana split joke.
Yes,
anyway,
you did.
Shut up. It's a good joke. I stand by it. So what split will do is you give it some character. And this is like something in your text, like the letter K, or in my case, a space. And what it'll do is it'll say, okay, look at the text you're giving it, so Kyle space Hamrick, and break it into two parts, the stuff before the space and the stuff after it. Or if you had 3 spaces, then it'd be like Kyle space Hamrick space something else. Okay, that's neat. And what this gives you is something called an array. And you see arrays a lot. It's like position and scale in After Effects are arrays. It just means a single thing that holds multiple items, like the X and Y scale of position. Well, the way we get arrays is with little square brackets and then a number to say what part of the array. And it starts at 0, and that's weird, and that's just a JavaScript-y thing. But this kind of technique, like this is something you can look at and copy and paste without needing to know too much about it. And when I click away, we're going to say, take the name of the layer, break it into little chunks based on anywhere you see a space, and give me the first object. It starts at 0. And so now it's Kyle. And so if we come down to that and change this to 1, and the 1 here is going to take the next chunk. So now we have Kyle as the first one, Hamrick as the second, and that works here. And you're like, look, now I can duplicate this and say, that's set up. But let's say we want this a little bit more interesting. We say Kyle Hamrick, senior motion designer.
You definitely want it to be more interesting than just Kyle Hamrick.
I don't know if we can get more interesting than just Kyle Hamrick. And here, instead of splitting with the space, let's split by the hyphen. And so when I let that go, it says, okay, Kyle Hamrick, everything before the hyphen is his name. And so that appears up here. If we change this one to a hyphen, now that's in the bottom. And so when you're doing your lower thirds, we can duplicate this out and say, big Catman extraordinaire. I can't spell despite typing fast. And it's just a really easy way to do all your versioning without needing to go and modify a million fiddly properties. Now, do I have a few more minutes?
If you want them, yeah.
Yeah, so
Take them.
There's one more little thing in that, okay, how often are you going to need 10 different lower thirds in one comp? That's not a great example. What's a lot more likely is that your whole comp will be set up. And in this case, I've dropped in my little lower third template, and I've got a simple little scene here. So here's where you have your footage or whatever. And because you don't want to render out this little comp with a bunch of lower thirds, you want to render out your full shot. So using this exact same trick, you'll notice here the expression doesn't say this layer name. It says this comp.name. And so this, you might guess, instead of pulling from this layer, is going to pull from this comp. And so it's a little different because I've written shot 1, Kyle Hamrick, senior motion designer. But the rest is the same thing. We take the name, we break it apart, and then we get the certain objects. In this case, we're not using 0 because 0 is shot 1. If we need to if we're doing slating or time codes, maybe we do want that little shot 1 value, but we don't here. And so here what I can do is I take my whole comp, we're going to duplicate it. Let's name it shot 2. We don't need to, we're just going to do it. Zack Lovatt, not so clever. And now when we open that comp, it's just updating everything here. My lower third is pulling from the comp name. This background text, it used the same technique, exact same idea, pulling from the comp name. And we can just duplicate this all the way down for each one of your pieces of footage. Now, you might want to drop in different actual footage into each one, but this saves you a whole lot of time in going and modifying all of that text. And then you just go and add all of these to your render queue, spit them out, and you've done all your versioning in a fraction of the time it would have taken you to do this by hand.
Awesome.
So that's name split.
Awesome.
One more thing.
Hit it.
If
Yeah,
that's
do it.
cool. Uh, this idea of like word dot thing, this can be really hard to remember. And so this little tiny arrow here really helps with that. So like next time when you're coming to find this, if you don't want to find this video and watch the stream, well, you can go down into this little flyout. You're like, hey, I remember that we're talking about the comp. And so what items does the comp have? Okay, well, the comp has something called name. I'm assuming this flyout's showing on the stream, actually. Not 100%, but I hope it is. And so if we click this, it just gives us that word. Now, we don't have the word this comp. That it's a little, we do have to type that by hand, but we're like, okay, what can I do with my comp? Oh, well, I can get layers in the comp. I can get the markers, the number of layers. You know, how many layers are in this comp? Oh, there's 3. You're hiding. But this little flyout menu is a great way to look up what you can do with every object. What do layers have? What do comps? And so on. I'm just going to reset that, and that's that for name and split.
Awesome. Are you actually done now?
I'm sorry. Wow.
That was amazing. And I think that's such a great example of the kind of stuff that, if you're making one of these, there's absolutely no reason to do that. But if you have to make 500 of these, hopefully it becomes really clear why spending the time to set that up once, and then you could just, there's literally ways to feed this with a spreadsheet that someone who doesn't even know After Effects could have built for you. And you just like do a couple clicks, feeds the whole thing, and now you spit out 500 of them with maybe without even touching After Effects if you have set this stuff up properly.
Yeah, it's cool. And a lot of this work is these ideas of like, you do a little bit more work up front, but it just pays off in the long run because it saves you all that minuscule tweaking time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So hopefully we got a great, we got some beginner stuff, just, like ways that you can kind of ease yourself into these and maybe see how you can use these in your everyday work to just make it easy. And then a great, hopefully still accessible example of how you can start leveling this stuff up for real power, but it really depends on what you need to do with it. So you don't always need to dive into the real scary stuff. All right, I think I'm going to take a couple questions here. I saw a really good one that I think would be great to address. Where'd that go? So someone asked about the difference between JavaScript the web dev might write and the JavaScript that is in the After Effects expression engine.
Yeah. Noel, I'll take this. So there's one thing to note in that in a recent version, and John Colombo in the chat can say which, the After Effects added a second expression engine. So traditionally, it was this old language called ExtendScript, which was like JavaScript, but it was like a 20-year-old version of JavaScript that that Adobe took and then did some little tweaks to it and put it in After Effects. And scripting still works in that world. But with expressions, there's now this new engine called JavaScript. And it is the exact same as what you'll see in a web environment. There's a few differences in that there's a helicopter, it's an LA problem. There's a few differences in that they've added all the After Effects stuff. So you still get, I believe you get like arrow functions and proper array, dealing with arrays, good ways to like filter through a ton of data. And effectively you get 20 years of JavaScript web dev enhancements and upgrades and optimizations that never existed in After Effects before. And so now After Effects expressions are so fast to write and work with and modify. It's great.
Awesome. I agree. Obviously, After Effects has some specific stuff that doesn't exist elsewhere. But, if you already know web programming, JavaScript, you got a pretty good start, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I was replying to the chat. Yeah, but it does help a lot. But at the same time, you don't need to be like a huge, crazy programmer.
Right.
Because a lot of the time you're using like this layer name or value times time or stuff like that, where you don't need any of that. And unsure if it'll help, but like I have zero training in like programming. Like I'm a motion designer. I came from graphic design, motion design, and picked up expressions and then scripting. Like I'm coming from the same point everyone here is. So Yeah, anyone
You
can
can
do it.
do it too.
Like Ratatouille, right? Anyone can cook.
Perfect. um, all right. So, I feel like we should just kind of keep this rolling here. We obviously got a little bit of a late start, but Noel, I know you have a cool example that you built, this rig that you built a couple years ago. That is, I think, a great example of like the kind of recipes that you can think of for doing things with After Effects that rely on expressions for part of them and just rely on like good After Effects knowledge for part of them too. We'll keep it short, but I want to showcase this because I think it's a really clever thing, and it's also something that it's very similar to one of the assignments in expression session. So I thought it'd be good to just kind of showcase the way you think here. So I've got your screen up, so it's all you.
Yeah, right on. So, I wanted to show you this. We actually rebuild this from scratch as part of expression session, and then ask the students to build a different kind of system. But this is all about creating kind of on-screen controls, which is really fun for me. And this started out because I was working on a project and I loved the tilt shift blur in Photoshop, but there's no equivalent in After Effects. And I was like, I wonder if I could build one myself. And then, days later, I was a sweaty, unshaven, nervous wreck, but I had actually managed to do it, thanks to Zach in a lot of cases too. But let me demo this for you. As you can see here, got this photo, and right now, it's a little hard to see, but what I'm going to do is turn off the UI. You can kind of see how this is working. It's got this nice tilt shift look to it. And let me put this back on. Basically, I built all this functionality in this, control up here. So you can kind of like rotate the blur. And then, the fun part about it is that you can adjust all of these. So like, basically the blur is defined by like, right here would be the non-blurry edge, and right here would be the fully blurry edge. And so you're kind of creating a range between those 2 points. And so you can kind of drag this out to make that blur wider, or kind of suck it in to make it, shorter, that area. But it's nice because, this control can move independently. It can move from all the way up here, and then it stops automatically when it hits this here, I believe. Yep. And then this controller here controls that one as well. So you can kind of set the distance, and then you can kind of like move it in and out, which is really fun to set up. And this is all set up, if you are an expression person, just using clamp, basically. Like as Kyle was just saying, it wasn't really that hard to set up. It's just really cool, and it gives you a lot of functionality. And I did a couple things like building in this like the opacity of the controls and stuff, so you can make this really like faint if you want to still work on it, or you can turn it off altogether. It's all guide layers, so none of it would render on there, but yeah, I just had like tons of fun. And look, there's a slider up here that I used as well. Hey, which controls the blur amount, so you can like crank it up and then be like super blurry. Yeah, so awesome. I don't know. I had a lot of fun building this, actually, and I think it's one of the most fun projects to work on in expression session.
I agree. I think it's very cool. It's a great use case thing too, where it's something that just doesn't exist in After Effects. Maybe there's a third-party plugin that can handle that, but sometimes if you think about the way things work, and you've obviously got some effects going on behind the scenes to drive that stuff as well, but
but very few actually.
Yeah.
I mean, just a camera lens blur and a gradient ramp, basically. That's it. So it's all effects that come with After Effects as well. So that's kind of cool.
And this isn't too far away from the way that even a lot of tools like Duik or something, where you provide all these screen controls. It uses a script to build those on there, and then the setup of what the on-screen controls are is basically what you have right here, and can be a really nice way to work so that you aren't just like fiddling with little numbers. Sometimes it's nice to just be able to touch things and move things around in a more tactile way.
Yeah, that's something that I really learned from taking character animation bootcamp, actually, that like on-screen controls just give artists and animators, it's just a more natural way to work, basically, touching and grabbing things rather than adjusting values, like you were just saying. So yeah.
Cool.
Shout out to Morgan for teaching me that. Thank you.
Awesome. And then Zach, you were going to tell us just a little bit. We kind of mentioned, I mentioned scripting a minute ago, and I know some people sometimes get confused about expressions and scripts and plugins and just like what the differences are between some of those. So do you want to maybe briefly talk to that?
Yeah. Do you have that handy?
I have a handy dandy slide, and it is up.
So I yeah the sorry, I'm just like pulling up my version of the slides so I can make sure I'm
You're a little quiet here.
Yeah.
well, that happens
There we
when I
go.
mutter. I'm sorry. So there are there's a lot of confusion around this, and a lot of the time people will say one word and mean the other, which me being me being me kind of annoys me. But they are different, and it does make a difference in that expressions are what we're talking about here. It's what expression session goes into. It's what Dan Ebert's whole thing is, and expressions are contained in After Effects on single properties. So you'll have an expression like we showed on scale or position or opacity or master properties. And they just exist in that little bubble. They don't affect anything outside of it unless that also has an expression. So it's like they'll take data in and do stuff, and they only live in that little world, and that's it. And those expressions are written in JavaScript or the old ExtendScript engine, but that's it. They're just like in After Effects, they run every single frame and do some calculation and output something. Scripts don't live in After Effects. They like live on After Effects. So a script will be something like doic or explode shape layers if you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah, as an example.
And as an example, just throwing it out there. And the idea of scripts is that 99% of the time, everything a script can do, you can do yourself by hand. Like it might take you a million years, but scripts just automate actions in After Effects. So something like doic, it's a script that applies expressions and builds layers for you. Like, yes, it gives you a rig, but really all it's doing is making nulls and writing code. You could do that yourself. But scripts are written outside of After Effects, and they apply to After Effects as software. And those are still written in ExtendScript, this like 20-year-old version of JavaScript with own Adobe-ness to it. And then this whole third thing are plugins, and those are like changing the how everything works. So like if an expression is some piece of, this analogy is about to break. An expression is like something you buy for your house. A script is something you hang on your house. A plugin is like tearing down a wall or adding a whole extension, like a whole new thing. Plugins, they change After Effects.
A whole hole?
A whole hole. Yeah. So some plugins add new effects, like all the trap code stuff. Those are plugins, or the video copilot stuff. But some plugins also add new behaviors, and like they change After Effects as a whole. Like I can't remember what it's called. Video Copilot has this launcher tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm blanking too. I use it every day.
Right. But also things like adding new codecs and stuff, where they don't give you graphic effects, but they're changing the way After Effects works inherently. And those are written in C++, and that's a whole other crazy beast. Now, of course, the question is, why should you care? So the thing is, if you're trying to look up, like, how do you randomly move a layer? Well, if you type in randomly move After Effects script, you're going to get something that somebody's created and maybe is up for sale, or you're going to find like deeper programming things when really all you're looking for is the word wiggle. And so that's sort of why it's good to know the nomenclature, the names of things, because if you're looking for expressions, you'll have a lot easier time searching up expressions or scripts. And like if you bought some scripting training, but really you want expressions training, like it's not really going to help you out.
Yeah, and there's a ton of great resources online for expressions, and you can ask people. There's a ton of people in the After Effects community that are very helpful. When you ask about this stuff, but yeah, understanding what you are asking is definitely a crucial thing there.
Yeah. FX console is what all of the chat is shouting at us. Yes, that one.
Sorry, when you're trying to do all this other stuff, sometimes little things like that just disappear from your brain. I love FX console. The only time I don't use it is when I'm doing a demo like this and I have to like use the vanilla After Effects menu. Okay, so let's keep rolling on along here. I want to get to some questions too, but I want to make sure I cover the things that I need to cover. So speaking of things like scripts, Zack actually has quite a few scripts and tools available, which is if you go to AE Scripts, you can find his stuff. I believe we have a link that we'll be dropping here as well that will take you directly to his stuff. Lots of really handy things there. And, Zach, somebody told me that you have a birthday coming up.
Ooh.
Yes. I don't remember when it started, but I guess a few years ago I discovered capitalism and decided to start offering a discount code on my birthday for all of my scripts, which is a little obnoxious. No, it's a lot obnoxious. But lucky for you, this year everything is 31% off, and on Sunday, August 30th, with a code that we'll toss up on screen.
It's up now.
And well, that's handy. Yeah, so it's like a one-day only thing for a discount on stuff, and
yeah. I mean, I don't think it's obnoxious. It's your birthday, and you're giving back to everyone else. I think that's so delightful.
I'm giving to everyone the opportunity to give me money.
Yes.
Though. So I hear you, but we'll see.
Excellent. And Noel, I know you actually have several awesome tools available as well. I've got those up here. You've got a couple of these great texture packs and wiper packs and stuff, and then obsessive layers, which is actually one of the things that's in my After Effects interface every day. It's just great for keeping everything tidy. So I just wanted to call those out too. And
shout out to Kyle Martinez, who developed obsessive layers with me. Yes, for me or with me. He did all the coding.
And I think a lot of people who when you work your way up, you start figuring out all these ways to improve your own workflow, and sometimes you're smart enough to make those products available to other people too, and ideally make a little bit of money off of it. But maybe sometimes at 31% off.
It's about the love.
It is. Okay, I feel like I should take a question or two here, and then we'll hop over and talk about Expression Session a little bit. And man, the time just flies when you're doing this, huh? I see a couple questions about markers, using markers in expressions. And I feel like maybe we should just kind of quickly say that is something that you can absolutely do. You can use markers to trigger expressions or drive them different ways. And if I recall correctly, there's actually a lesson late in Expression Session that's all about doing that, yeah?
Yep. The magic of markers.
Yeah. Noel, do you want to talk a little bit more about what we do?
No, not really. Well, yes,
nope,
okay, fine.
The end.
We use, for example, one of the things that we demo, which I love, is using markers to flip between different mouth states so that you can animate a character talking, which that's the kind of thing that I could see being super useful. You just add a marker and then type the letter basically, and then the mouth forms into that shape. So that was really useful. Yeah. Then there's the beast, of course.
Yeah, that's a super fun one. I think in general the projects in the course are super fun. I was one of the teaching assistants for it for the first few sessions, so I'm pretty familiar with it myself. I like this comment. I didn't actually see who it was from, but it's always a fun trade-off. Do I make this easy for future me, or do I just go heads down and get this faster now? Which I think is a great encapsulation of some of the stuff we've been talking about. Sometimes you won't realize that future you is going to have to deal with the thing, but especially certain clients, sometimes you start realizing that it's good to make life easy for future you by, giving an extra 10 minutes now to set things up.
Yeah, this idea is something that Noel kind of mentioned early on. In that he mentioned the rabbit hole, and this is this idea of it's so easy to just add one more feature, add one more protection or one more thing to your code, and then you spent 3 days on something where really you shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to tell because sometimes you think this is going to be worth the effort, and then you get into it and you realize actually this was a misstep. But in my opinion, every one of these is something you're learning for the next time. And so it's you're still learning the skills, you're still learning the habits, you're learning what does or doesn't work, and maybe you can never use this one super specific expression ever again. But you can learn you can use what you've learned for the next one, and so there's still some value there.
Yeah, absolutely. I won't pretend that, sometimes I just enjoy doing those things as thought experiments, but you can fully acknowledge that that's why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And is this thing possible? I don't know. And then a day later, sometimes the answer is no. But, okay. So, time. There's never enough. So let's take a second here and talk just a little bit about Expression Session, which is a course that you, if you want to just really dive deep into expressions and learn, useful ways to use them that are easy, all the way up to really advanced upper level stuff. School of Motion does have that course available. Does either of you want to just, give me a couple sentences about who should take this and maybe what they're going to learn, why they would want to take this?
Well, I'll start. First of all, if you know nothing about expressions, you could still take this class. So we ramp up from literally how do I even just press Option and click on the stopwatch kind of beginning and talk about the idea of expressions and stuff, all the way up to really complicated, tasks. So I think anybody could take it. I think definitely if you're going to take Saunders' advanced motion methods, is that what it's called? Yeah, AMM. You should definitely take this class first, I think, because he uses a lot of expressions in what he lectures about and expects you to have some knowledge of them already. I just think it's not probably for somebody who's a complete beginner, but if you're at that kind of animation bootcamp level, I think the class would be great for you. Anybody who really just wants to save time, I think.
Yeah. From a little bit more technical point of view, if you've played with any sort of JavaScripty stuff before, but maybe you're new to expressions in After Effects, there's still value there in that, we do spend a good chunk of time teaching teaching the basics of JavaScript. What are objects and properties and arrays and how do you access this stuff and nice syntax and formatting. And so that, it'll start a little slow. But where it really excels is that Expression Session isn't a course on coding. It's a course on expressions. And part of expressions and technical rigging in After Effects is learning the workflows and when to use things and how to break down a problem into steps. And so if you know the answer is, I need to create markers and then have my animation loop every time we see a marker in the timeline, well then the coding part is only half of the battle. What you really need to know is how to break down that skill, separate it into components, and then work on each one until you're building a bigger thing. And so a lot of this problem solving and different way of thinking is what Expression Session spends a lot of time going into.
Absolutely. It's very much like a creative problem solving course that just happens to use JavaScript code as the solutions for a lot of those questions. But it's very much, like I said, as someone who has been a teaching assistant for it, it's very much about figuring out how to think about these problems and then using these tools that you're being provided incrementally, more and more complex to offer solutions. And you get all the way to the end of the course and you make this really complicated UI thing that actually has no keyframes at all, which again, maybe is just a fun thought experiment, but all the stuff that you're doing in there is so super useful for all these other ways that you're going to be using it all the time, in my opinion, which is obviously amazing.
I mean, I get it's maybe a little biased, but even if you're not, I feel like a lot of the stuff that we teach as far as this problem solving and workflow based kind of systems, not systems, but workflow based approaches will help even with your non-expression projects. Because everyone on the stream, you have definitely had comps where you have 300 layers, half them are off, half are shy, and you don't know what's going on. And so just learning the value and benefit of breaking things up into more modular component, there's so much to be said for thinking about how you're working, both before you start and once you're actually in it. And so, I don't know, I find that really valuable.
Yeah. And we do a lot on master properties as well. If anybody's interested in really doing a deep dive into that stuff, we cover that a lot. And even things about like shape layers and how to set that up that I didn't even really know before we started. So like the problem solving is really out of control in the class. It's really good.
Out of control in the absolute best way.
Right.
I've been using expressions for many years. I teach expressions at conferences and stuff like that, and I definitely picked up a ton of stuff by going through the course. So, props to you guys for putting together something that is very informative for people of a bunch of different levels. I've seen a couple people in the chat here talking about how much they took it, and it's just like super accelerated their workflow and stuff like that. So I think that's a great thing.
And we did bring in great artists as well to
Yes.
make the art for the class as well. Jimmy Simpson, Lisa Virtudes, some really fun people. John Flores, shout out. So yeah, thanks to you all. And I think the art's really fun for this class. So yeah.
I agree. In general, it's just a very fun class. And for some of those asking, yes, the level of puns in that course is like, if you think today is ridiculous, it's just off the charts.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to keep moving here because we probably need to be done in just a few minutes, which is crazy. Real quick, Noel, you also teach After Effects Kickstart. Do you just want to give me like a super quick summary of that and who might want to be taking that?
Absolutely. The answer to that question is that After Effects Kickstart is, I'm slightly biased, but I believe it is the best, most fun way to learn After Effects that exists in the known universe. So, like I said, I'm biased, but if you don't know After Effects and you're listening to this now, which I find pretty strange if you are, but if you are, you should definitely take After Effects Kickstart, which like starts at the very beginning of your After Effects life and just takes you and like basically you learn how to make a keyframe, and then by the end of it you're animating a 30-second commercial that Ariel Costa designed. It's kind of an amazing thing to watch every session, how much people learn. Actually, it's a great class if I do say so myself.
I will also agree with you. I mean, obviously you're a guest here on my show, so I'm going to be nice to you. But as someone who's also been teaching After Effects for I think like 8 years or something like that, I just think it's an excellent course. And honestly, I'm jealous of the people that take it now, because when we were learning After Effects 15 years ago, I wish courses like this existed back then, because it probably took me 3 years to learn the stuff that people are getting in like 8 weeks now, right?
Yeah, it's totally true. It's really true.
So, okay. Speaking of learning things, you both have some conference appearances coming up, and I want to give those some shout outs. Trying to keep rolling quick here because we're almost at time, even though, it's a little squishy. But I wanted to give a shout out to where are we going? Here we go. Adobe Video World is coming up in just a couple of weeks here, September 12th through 17th. And Zach, I believe that you are appearing there. Is that right?
I am. I'm giving 3 talks. One on introduction to master properties, where like the kind of behind the scenes stuff you didn't see today, we'll go into that. Kind of showing how to set up projects, use the master properties, and then use expressions to link stuff, make it dynamic. There'll also be an intro to expressions, which is like, a little bit this whole world we're talking about. And an intro to scripting as well, in case you do want to see what it's like to be building tools for After Effects. So those are my 3 little talks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
School of Motion has a big presence there. There's actually 4 instructors presenting there, as well as a handful of other like noteworthy alumni and stuff. So we're sort of just slowly taking over. Okay, so I know that our time is short, but I actually have a couple of passes to give away to Adobe Video World. Let me bring this back up real quick. But so if you want an opportunity to go to this, it's in about 2 weeks here. We have a form that we're going to drop into the chat in just a second here. And between now and the end of the show, you can drop your name and email in there, and we won't use it for anything except just contacting you if you win. But yeah, we have, I believe, 3 passes to give away. So yeah, if you are available for that, sign up for that real quick. There it is. I see it in the chat. And we're going to keep moving on to some other stuff while we talk about that. But yeah, there's a ton of really great content there for you can learn about Premiere, you can learn about After Effects, you can learn about Cinema 4D. There's stuff about freelancing and the business side of things, as well as general creativity. A lot of really cool sessions there. I'm one of the speakers as well, but I'm always excited just to watch all the other sessions. Because even when you're more advanced, that kind of stuff is great for just like seeing how other people think and how they approach stuff. So I really like conferences. Looking forward to when they can actually be in person again. Hopefully someday soon. Okay, so there's also another really big conference coming up pretty soon that a little birdie told me that you are presenting at, Noel. So
That is true.
I'm gonna show that on my screen here. It is Adobe Max, which this year is all online and all free, which is pretty amazing that Adobe is doing that. Obviously, it's a pretty big pivot to take like a 14,000 person conference and put it online. But so Adobe October 20th through 22nd, Adobe Max is there. You do need to sign up so that you can like register for the classes you want to watch. But Noel, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're going to be talking about there?
Yeah, definitely. And everybody here should join Keanu and myself when we're hanging out. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a 4-part lab with the amazing Sarah Beth Morgan. She takes the first 2 where she talks about design and concepting. She creates an illustration based on like a client brief. And then I take it over from her. I teach people how to animate in After Effects real quick, and then I show them how I would animate her drawing. And it's a really fun 2 hours. We worked really hard on it. So I think, you guys should all check it out. It's going to be good.
Awesome. Yeah, I got just a little sneak peek. Sarah Beth and I were talking a little bit as we were setting up for my last live stream, and it looks really cool. I'm really excited to watch what you two do together and how that works out.
Yeah, it was a great honor to work with her, honestly.
Cool. And our fearless leader, Joey, is also speaking at Adobe Max about the basics of motion design. And then some other dude named Kylie Hamrick or something like that. He has a couple sessions too, but they're probably not that great.
They're probably boring.
Yeah. Probably.
Wow.
Okay, so I feel like we need to go ahead and wrap up here. So Frank and Ella, if you haven't already, if you want to go ahead and pick a couple winners, and I'll announce those in just a minute here. But while we kind of wrap stuff up, do you guys want to just kind of quickly, Noel, we'll start with you. If people want to know more about you or follow you on the socials or anything like that, where can they do those things?
Well, everything is on my website, so you can go to tdr.nyc and everything's there. But you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at DrawingRoomNYC, and on Instagram I'm at Nol Honig, and I'd love to see you all there. So definitely follow me. Yeah.
Awesome. How about you, Zach?
Usually Twitter at Zed Lovatt or C Lovatt for you Americans. Also reluctantly Instagram at the same, just Lovatt everywhere you look. Feel free to reach out with any expression or scripting questions. I spend a lot of my time helping folks and answering questions, so I'm around if you need to get a hold of me.
What a nice guy.
It's a Canadian thing. Like, you're obliged to. You lose citizenship if you're just not nice.
Oh, I didn't realize that was a requirement.
It's
good.
It's a thing.
Okay, I am looking to see if... Okay, it looks like they're picking winners, so I'm going to take a second and go ahead and... let you nice folks know in 2 weeks here, I will be back with another episode of Workflow Show, and we will be talking about Cavalry, the newly released, just like 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. They were in open beta for quite a while, and it's just released, where Cavalry is a new motion design app that has this really cool like procedural workflow. Works quite a bit different than, obviously we've been spending a lot of time talking about After Effects today, but they took a very different approach to solving some of the kinds of things that we were solving today with Expressions. So I'm really interested to dig into that and see what they have to say. No comment from anyone else. All right.
Well, if you want to punt, some people are like, "Hey, Cavalry's like 2D Houdini," which to me just makes it. Might as well call it 2Dini. But
Houdini. I like that.
They might disagree.
I'm stalling just for a second because I would love to announce these winners here on the thing, and but
You're so good at stalling, Kyle.
am I?
It's amazing
It's good.
how good you are at that.
That is great.
Your skills are amazing.
While I'm waiting for that, do either of you have Noel? I think you said you actually had a couple of projects that you just finished up. Be cool to like plug those to drive people to your site if you like. I don't know.
Sure, yeah. Are you showing my site or?
No, I just talk it up for a second. I can probably show your site though. You start talking.
Yeah, I just
I'll
finished.
Get there.
I'll talk slowly. Yeah, so I just finished up a couple of worked on this campaign for Golden Wolf, where I did animation, and it was really fun. And I just put that spot, which is like their the Old Navy "We Are We" campaign. You might have been seeing it on TV and stuff. So I did a lot of the 2D animation in there with creative direction from Golden Wolf and some other animators as well. But I just put that on my site. Love for you to check that out. It's really actually a fun spot, and it kind of addresses specific 2020 things. So check it out. There was also a Canadian version that was made, I know. So Zach, maybe you want to watch that one.
Maybe.
And I also just put up some work that I worked on for Verizon. Just did a little bit of a quick update on my site. So definitely check it out.
Awesome. Cool. Well, let me see if I have some winners here. I see, I can see cursors somewhere moving around. I don't know. You know, we could probably also just announce it in the chat if maybe I'm just not seeing it on my big disorganized show board. No, I got it. Okay, great. Awesome. So I have three people here. I have a Lindsay Bistline, maybe, and Arbnor Haziraj, sorry for probably butchering that. And then also Coralie Legrand, whose name I recognize. I know she's a School of Motion alum from at least a course or two. So that's really great. Congrats to you three, and we'll get in touch with you with a code so that you can attend Adobe Video World virtual conference for free and hopefully learn all kinds of amazing stuff from Zach and myself and a bunch of other smart people. Okay, well, man, I feel like we could just keep doing this all day, but
Yes.
you know, we're already running late since I messed a bunch of stuff up at the beginning, so we should probably, unfortunately, end this show. Do either of you have anything else that you want to give us as parting thoughts here?
Just thanks everybody for watching. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. Congrats on the winners, and
Yes.
have a great Friday.
Yeah. And thanks for the patience, everyone. Thanks for hopping over here into a different stream. I'm going to figure out what happened there. But I actually just saw a question pop up from Todd. Are there any Adobe employees in here? And yes, I think we talked about this earlier. Our buddy John is here. There he is, waving. Which, you know, also functions as a nice goodbye wave, which I feel like we should maybe all do here. And then I'll press this little button to send us out, and that'll be the end, which is sad, but you know what, we're on to other things. And yeah, have a great Friday, have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks to both of you for, you know, coming and talking with me today and putting up with my technical nonsense, and thanks to everyone in the chat for hanging with us and sending us your questions. I always get way more than I ever have a chance to ask, but yeah, thanks everybody, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.